Welcome back. Pakistan's madrassas, the traditional religious schools, have a bad reputation in the West, with the perception they are hubs for extremism. We're taking a closer look at the issues and the prospect of reforming the madrassa system. Joining me is Azhar Hussain, Senior Vice President for Preventative Diplomacy at the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy, and Qamar-ul, a Senior Program Officer in the Religion and Peacemaking Centers of Innovation at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Actually, Qamar, I want to get on to the personal experiences you've had going around and the projects you've undertaken.
Yes.
What sort of response have you had when you've gone into madrassas and tried to say, perhaps, there's a need to look at the way these schools run?
Right. Well, whenever we go in with our projects in madrasas, we find there's open receptivity to having workshops or having discussions, not just of reforming. We don't talk about reforming and say you need to change, but we ask about, with certain teachers, what is needed here? How do you see the future of your institution? What do you want for your institutions? What legacy do you want madrasas to leave, not just for Pakistan, but for the local region? And we found a very openness to workshops. And
what do they say? What do they want to, what effectively do they want to achieve in the madrasas, according to them?
One, they want, like any teacher around the world, they want their students to succeed. And they also want their students to be very competitive in the market. So their students should complete their education, but whatever field they choose, whether it be in religious studies or medicine, law, business, whatever, they want them to excel. Because eventually they become alumni and part of an alumni network who then contribute back to their madrasas. All teachers, I think, want their students to succeed, excel, but to also be very good at what their particular moment is to study religious studies.
Did you come across any real resistance? Did you come across any real negativity? Were you ever basically told to go away?
Oh, several times. Most people in madrasas, when there's some affiliation with the United States or a U.S. organization, first, in many parts of the world, not just in Pakistan, there's a degree of suspicion. And there's a degree that the person is here to co-opt us, to change us, to force us to be someone or another image than who they are. But we constantly repeat that we're not here to do anything. If you don't like our program, our workshops, are more than happy to leave. And very few do leave. But it leaves a good opportunity to discuss these things. What sort of biases are there? Why do you have these images? Or why do you have these certain understandings that anyone from XYZ country is here to change you?
Well, Azhar, you had a particularly disturbing experience on one occasion, didn't you, where you were basically going to be the target of one of the people at the madrasas?
Yeah, we have had workshops where people have attended workshops from madrasas to, with the intention was to, as they would put it, to neutralize you.
So they came essentially to kill you.
Right. I think that's what they said at the end of the workshops. And after 5 or 6 days of the workshop, they walked away saying, I came in very angry at you. I'm walking away being angry at my earlier teachers who taught me all of these very negative stereotypes of other people, of other sects, of other nations or other nationalities or other religions. And in fact, they've made incredible changes in their own madrasa environment.
What was the biggest difficulty you faced? What was the most negative response you've had?
From madrasa?
Yeah, I mean, have there been cases where you're going to have no success at all?
We almost. What we ask them once they are in our workshops, most of the time we are talking about an intervention as a workshop. Once they're in a workshop, I ask them if anything, stick around for 2 days. It's a 6 to 10 day workshop, and if you don't like it, you're free to go. And after 2 days, they have lots of questions about United States and why are we interested in doing this. But because I'm from Pakistan and Qamar is from Pakistan, we grew up in Karachi, I think there is a level of trust and credibility that we bring with the language and all of that, so that we can overcome that within 2 days. Once they see that we genuinely looking to enhance madrasa education and develop the teaching pedagogy of it and bring more tolerance to it, they tend to stick around. So we have not had negative experiences where the whole classroom has walked away.
Interestingly enough, in the same way that perhaps the community in the rural areas and the madrasas have sometimes a negative image of the U.S., the images that we see and the ones we've been showing on this program of the madrasas are often the stereotypical images that people have of madrasas. Like it looks a little bit, suspicious to the West.
Yes. Yeah, and I think images sometimes are more damaging than the actual relationships. I think Azhar and I, we come with this background of human relationships. We've talked to people, we have relationships, and we see, you know, pictures of students memorizing the Quran. However, there's much more than beyond that particular picture. There's so much more happening in these madrasas other than what the images are of children running with arms or being trained for arms. And majority of them are students and trying to get an education and doing their best within a very limited environment.
Well, Azhar, earlier this year, Pakistan's government shut down a US-funded multi-million-dollar plan to reform madrasas after many school officials refused to accept this sort of government intervention. So how does that, how is your work affected by this kind of resistance? From US shutting down the plan?
Well,
the resistance that you face when they see the monies come from outside, that they see that there's foreign intervention as well.
Right. I think, of course, madrasa leaders tend to be quite nuanced, and if it is directly government-funded money from United States or any Western governments, I think that raises a huge suspicion for them, just as it is raises suspicions if it's Pakistani government money, because they really do want the civil society and experts to be able to enhance madrasa education, and not based on any kind of agenda. And remind you, these governments have always had these covert agendas with madrasas before, and that have eroded so much trust in working with any government programs. So I think that creates huge issues for us.
Is there even an option of shutting down madrasas?
Well, whoever considers that option, whether it be the Pakistani government or other regional forces, I think they'll make the biggest mistake, because these are institutions that's lasted for many centuries. And two, the reasons they exist in the end is that because there's a demand for the supply. And the demand is that children want an education, the families do want an education. The students come from not just poor backgrounds, but from middle class and upper class backgrounds.
And they don't really have an option in many places, do they?
No, in fact, one study actually shows that madrasa students excel compared to those who went to public schools and other private schools. They excel in math and sciences as well as other subjects too.
It makes me wonder, Azhar, to what extent does Pakistan's approach to reforming education need to be reformed itself, considering reports that only about 2% of the government's budget, the country's gross national product, is allocated towards education?
Absolutely. I think Pakistan's approach, provincial textbook boards have to be eliminated, and because that creates quite a bit of intolerance within public school studies as well, because it has a huge intolerant agenda of the state within the textbooks itself. So it's not just madrasas, it's public school system too. The whole educational sector has to look at it itself very seriously and pump in a lot more money into it than the 2%.
Do you think the US will get over this post 9/11 fear of madrasas based on that post 9/11 fear of Islam?
That probably will only happen with a lot more work from both sectors, madrasas and Muslims generally. Pakistanis have to be more active with their own public image, now being seen as a hub of terrorism. But Americans themselves need to really reevaluate after almost 9 years after 9/11, whether these issues of madrasas. We have to recall that 9/11 hijackers did not come from madrasas. Many of the problems that we see today are not coming from madrasas. They're coming from middle class, university-trained mujahideen, or members who are tied to Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and they're not coming from madrasas. But some do, and we shouldn't be apologetic. But the point is, both sides, all sides, whether it be America or the States or in Pakistan, they have to really assess their hang-ups and their biases.
Azhar, a final thought, as we sort of come just, with half a minute to go or so, how do you handle those madrasas where you go and where they have a history of producing extremism?
The way you handle them is engage them. I think multiple times when we have engaged such madrasas in interior Punjab or in northwest frontier or in Balochistan, many of those madrasas were linked to mujahideen movements, if you will. But once you engage them slowly, the resistance goes down. They tend to want the same thing as the other school teachers want. The madrasas, right now we have 5,000 to 6,000 madrasas asking us, and some of them are the one that you just described, saying they help us to modernize our madrasas. So engagement is the key, isolation isn't.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining us for this discussion. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for being with us. Remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified of upcoming shows, and you can send questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, how possible is it to end extreme poverty around the world? Some visionaries believe it's within humanity's reach, but not without changing entrenched global economic systems that favor wealthy countries. Make sure to tune in for that. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.